land. Crazy as we see it with the story of Joseph, because as Paul shared and Stephanie shared, Joseph is a foreshadow of Messiah. And look at all that had to happen for the Jewish people to come to him. I mean, all those years ago they had to hate him. They had to kick him out. Joseph had to go through absolute hell. I mean, sold into slavery in Egypt, thrown into prison, miraculously interpreted a dream in prison, and then the one who got rescued forgot all about Joseph, so he had to stick around in prison. Eventually comes out, interprets a dream for Pharaoh that there's going to be 7 years of good stuff and 7 years of famine. 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine. Pharaoh is so impressed, he makes him second in command to Pharaoh, which is also a foreshadow of Yeshua, who's second in command to his father, but in charge of everything. Pharaoh said to him, "You're in charge of everything, but you report up to me," just like Yeshua. And then in the end, the famine came, and there come the Jewish people after all this time, forced out of starvation and hunger to come to Egypt, a land they did not want to go to. Imagine if there's like some sort of famine in America and you got to go to ISIS territory because you hear they have food and you got to go bowing before, the enemy and say, "I hear you got some food, can I have some food?" This is practically what the Jewish people had to do. And then all of a sudden, this viceroy of Pharaoh rips off his garments. Wouldn't you know it, it's their brother. What the heck? I mean, it's this amazing story. All of that just to bring deliverance for Israel and his band of 70. To give them food and to give them salvation and a place to rest and a place to dwell. All of that was for them. So much so that Joseph, when the brothers came to Joseph, the brothers were like, "Oh my gosh, we are so dead. Joseph is absolutely going to kill us." But Joseph said, "Don't even fight about it amongst yourselves." Everything that happened, the whole story, from beginning to end, was from God. You didn't send me here by kicking me out. God sent me here. God sent you here? You mean God forced you to go into slavery? God forced us to hate your guts and sell you off and to throw you in a ditch? God threw you into prison? God did all that? Joseph says, yes, it's all from the Lord. Don't even fight about it amongst yourselves. It was all from the Lord to deliver you. The whole story. It's an amazing, amazing thing. How the veil got taken off of Joseph's eyes to realize that all the hell he went through was all from the Lord. All from the Lord. Is that crazy? When can we actually say, all that hell I went through, don't even fight about it. You who persecuted me, don't even think about saying it was your fault. It was all from the Lord to bring about deliverance. That is an ultimate eye-opener that we're all going to go through at some point when the Lord reveals his plans to us and when he comes and we get to see this whole amazing story in retrospect and we're like, my gosh, God ordained that to happen. I was blaming everybody else for what they did to me. But the Lord allowed it. It was from him to bring about great deliverance. It is an amazing, amazing thing. So, we hit the end of the story of Joseph. And Joseph does something. So the 7 years of plenty came and went. Now it's time for the 7 years of famine. And the famine is going, and it's going, and there's a couple of years have passed in this famine. And Joseph does something that in our democratic American eyes would seem like it's a really bad thing. Because, of course, American democracy equals Christianity. Of course it does. Doesn't the Bible say, thou have a right to bear arms? I mean, doesn't that come from the Bible? I'm being careful. Does it? I don't know. Does it? Because we are Americans. And we love our democracy. And we hate the communists. Because that's what we do. So what happens with Joseph? The famine comes. He does something that if it happened in this day and age, my gosh, the backlash. I don't know if you realize it, but we know that over the time of plenty, Joseph devised a plan that he was going to store up grain. Right? There was all this excess, so he takes all the grain and he stores it in storehouses owned by Pharaoh. Right? He stores up all this excess. Well, that sounds like a great idea, and it was an amazing divine plan. So what happens when the famine really starts to hit hard in Egypt? Well, the people of Egypt, they go to Joseph. And they say, Joseph, we're starving. So he sells them grain. Stay with me here. He sells them the grain. Okay? You give me your money, and I'll give you the grain. And that perpetuated over time, until it says there was no more money left in Egypt. Which means that Pharaoh and Joseph took all the money and kept it. And did not redistribute it. Now, the government owned all the money. There was no money left in Egypt. Everybody had zero, and Pharaoh and Joseph had everything. So then, the famine is still going. So they say, we're out of money. We'll give you our livestock for the food, for the grain, for the bread. So Joseph says, sounds good. So everybody gives their horses and their cattle and all their donkeys and all that kind of stuff. Now Pharaoh not only owns all the money, he owns all the stuff. All the livestock, which was pretty much their possessions. So now they can eat. But then the famine continued and continued. So the people say, we're starving, what do we do? We'll sell you, we'll give you our property. This is all in this Torah portion. We'll give you our property. Okie doke. Here's some food. Now Pharaoh, the government, owns all the money, all the belongings, and all the land. And the famine keeps going. And they say, what can we do? We'll sell you ourselves. We'll give to you ourselves. Do what you want with us. We're dying. We have nothing left. So take us. We'll work for you. We'll do whatever you want. Just give us the bread. They say, okay, Pharaoh and Joseph. So now the government owned all the money, all the land, all the possessions, and enslaved all the people. Everything they owned, the people owned nothing. This is probably the first instance of raw communism in the Bible. Communism, that's of the devil. Not in this case. The Lord divinely wanted this to happen. So Joseph can store all this grain and bless Israel. The Egyptians were pummeled. They had nothing. They were subjugated to the Egyptian, to Pharaoh. Why? Because God willed it. For the blessing of Israel and this band of 70 who he wanted to prosper in Goshen. And this makes no sense to us because we're Americans. And democracy is the holy political system, of course. And communism is the evil one. But not in this case. So let me just explain a little bit what's happening. Everything in the Torah is prophetic and speaks of Messiah. And we know that Joseph is a foreshadow of Messiah. So what he did is a foreshadow of when it says in Corinthians that he, the Son, will subject everything unto him. And he will hand the kingdom back to the Father. So this thing that happened where all the Egyptians said, we're done, we will give you our lives, is a foreshadow of what happens in the end when everybody subjects themselves to the Son. So it's a foreshadow of that. But it makes me think, why would God allow a communist system in Egypt? And it makes me realize that governments are God's pawns. Every one of them. America included. He will do what he wants with any government for his good pleasure. He doesn't care about democracy. He doesn't care about communism. He doesn't care about socialism. He doesn't care about any of the other isms out there. His kingdom is a theocracy with Yeshua as king. And that is the only theocracy we want. And the only law from him is the Torah. And we only want that to be enacted with Messiah as king. Because if Messiah is not king, even the Torah can be a system of oppression. Right. Do you really want the Constitution to be the Torah? No. I don't think you do. Because if it's a human president that's enacting this thing, it can only be oppression. It can only be oppression. What's the first commandment in the Torah? You shall love the Lord your God. There shall be no other gods before me. Do you want America to have a law that you're not allowed to worship any other god but God? Freedom of religion is against the Torah. Do you understand that? Freedom of religion, which we love, is actually against Torah. If you want Torah to be the Constitution, you got to make that the only legal religion. So Torah will be the law of the land, but only when Mashiach is king. And that's the only time it will be enacted in holiness. Outside of that, it can be used for oppression. We see that with our Jewish people thousands of years ago. It was used as a tool of oppression. So God is in control of all governments. He will set them up. He will knock them down. He will set them up. He will knock them down. It's like a game of bowling for the Lord. He'll set up the pins. He'll knock them down according to his good pleasure. And I only tell you this to encourage you because there's a lot of angst and passion these days around America. About the way America's supposed to go. And about what's the holy way for America. I need to encourage you that God's got this under control. Right, come on now. He's got it. There are many believers, Christians and Messianic Jews, that feel that this world is out of control. I tell you, if you think the world is out of control, you do not believe in God. Come on now. Because God has everything in control. If it is out of control, that means that God is not God. He's having it in control. It is under control. It is happening exactly the way He's planning it. Exactly the way it's happening. So be encouraged. Be of good cheer. Look up. For your redemption draws close. It's all happening according to plan. Wait a minute, you're saying all this stuff that we're seeing is actually of the Lord? Well, read the story of Joseph. All of that was from the Lord. Yes, it's from the Lord. Yes, He is allowing it. And I speak to all of you. I do not come before you as a Republican or a